Hello.
Hi.
Hi, welcome everybody. This is live on Thursday, December 2nd.
Starting in about 5 minutes.
Yep. Thank you for joining us tonight. We're looking forward to an exciting conversation.
Especially during Advent. I mean, a lot of people, I think, are more directed to their faith. And they got questions about spirituality or God. So we hope you do. And we'll text them in or call them in. I guess they just text them,
Yeah,
right?
not call. Please don't call.
I'm Father Kevin Anderson.
And I am Teresa Callison, Parish Administrator at Christ Our Light. I think in our church, or parish, we have really taken COVID precautions seriously. So we don't want anybody to think we aren't tonight. Father Kevin and I have both been vaccinated and had our boosters.
Yes.
And Jenny also. Good job, Jenny.
Thank you. Thank
So
you.
just want you to know that we are sitting rather closely unmasked, but we do spend quite a bit of time together, and we're very careful.
And I do know that we've had families in the parish who unfortunately are dealing with COVID, and on behalf of them, they're asking you also if you'd consider vaccination. Just these are families who have had to deal with it firsthand. So unfortunately, we keep them in our thoughts and prayers. There have been some serious cases.
Yeah, it's crazy. So how is your Advent going so far?
You know, I love the season of Advent. I really do. As you can see, I have my Advent wreath going on behind us, and I light it every morning. I get a chance to pray every day. I take the time, actually, about an hour, and I'll have the Advent wreath lit, and I have my little scripture and journaling and different meditations. How's yours going?
It's going good so far. I have appreciated this lovely reflections book we have this year. Just with a daily reflection, which I like it because it's kind of short and sweet. And
do we have any more still?
We do have plenty, so
okay.
They are available at church.
And if you have a buck to throw in to defray the cost, great. But if you don't, please take one anyway. Mm-hmm. We'd love you. Even if you could stop in during the day, if you can't join us on the weekends, just come by the church, ring the bell, we'll get you a book. We'd love to have you deepen your Advent. Actually, it goes up until, I think, the baptism of Jesus, right? Middle of January.
Yes, baptism of our Lord.
Right. And here's a sneak announcement. We haven't said this yet, but those of you who will be attending our Christmas liturgies, we have a gift for you.
Yes,
each household we have a gift. So that's all I'm going to say right now. Come and join us on Christmas Eve or Christmas Day, and you'll be hearing more about that. But we have a gift.
It's crazy to think that it's going to be here so soon. I mean, it's already December 2nd.
Today was a crazy day to think of Advent because I was out running just in shorts and things because it was so warm today. And this is December, so I'm not really there yet with the outside weather, but when I come into church or light Advent wreath, then it feels more like the season. How about you?
Yeah, I mean, it's just...
Now, do you like snow?
I do not care for snow.
I didn't think you did like snow.
I am a December birthday baby.
Yeah.
And I find that usually people with their birthdays in the winter, they don't really care for it.
Wow.
I don't know why. I was also born during a snowstorm. So nobody came to visit me in the hospital, and I kind of still hold a grudge towards snow because of it. So...
Well, I was born in August, as Jenny was, and I don't mind snow. Actually, I like it. I like to do outdoor things in snow. I never want the weather to dictate my activity level. So I run, go skiing, that kind of thing, even if it's snowing.
Yeah.
Even if it's closed.
Well, as we're going to get started, while people are still jumping on, I just want to post a question for people to chime in the comments. Does anybody have their Christmas tree up yet? It's confession time. We did just have reconciliation last night. Who is already decorating?
Because it's the season of Advent and we wait for Christmas, right?
And so I suggest asking who of you don't have your tree up yet.
Yeah. I have mine up.
Okay, Jenny
I don't
doesn't.
have my tree
Okay.
up yet.
And I have the easiest tree to put up because what I do is it's a fake tree and I just put a sheet over it and put it down in the basement. And so when I'm ready to put it up, I just bring it up, take the sheet off, plug it in.
Wow. Nothing
Voila,
says
Christmas.
Getting into the Christmas spirit.
Nothing says that than going down
the
and
sheet off.
Going down to my basement and getting the sheet off. That's right.
Good. Good.
I take more time with my creche scene, let me tell you. I'll take more time with that.
Oh, I am in the market for a good nativity scene.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
situation.
All right. I'm thinking we are ready to start.
Great. Well, tonight we're going to start off with talking. We have a few topics tonight. Why do we need church? Religion and spirituality, and doubts. So if people have questions about that they'd like to chime in with, that would be great. But one I had here right away is, can I be Christian and not go to church?
Wow. Yes is the answer. But I would think if you're really connected to your faith, you would want to go to church. It's sort of like saying, can I own a car and never put gas into it? It's like, sure, of course, but to make it run, you should put gas into it. And even more so, you should like take it in for a tune-up or something. So can you be a Christian? Yes, but it's the whole idea of being fed. People who say like, I'm a cook, but I never cook. It's like, Or people say, I'm a runner, but I never run. It's like, well, I think to actually be a Christian is what it means, is to actually gather with other people.
All right. Why do we need to go to Mass? Or why are we obligated to go to Mass every Sunday?
Well, besides the fact that it's a commandment, besides the fact of way back from Moses saying, keep holy the Sabbath, it's the whole idea of getting fed. As you know, when we had the COVID time, the obligation to attend was lifted because the bishops did not want people exposed to COVID. And now that it's not lifted anymore, people are really questioning, say, well, wait a minute, how come I didn't have to go then, but now I have to go now? I like to view it more in the fact of like, when you do come to Eucharist, Mass, you are receiving the presence of Christ. Can you see Christ in other things? Of course. But in a special way, we recognize right here, right at this moment, we have that Christ present in the Eucharist and that we receive it. So I'd like to spin it more of saying like, why do I have to go? But it's like, can I go more often? I mean, can I go more than just one day a week? And I would say, of course, we have Mass nearly every day of the week. Here at Christ Our Light, and most churches do. But I think it's the whole idea of getting, like I go back to the car image, getting fuel for the journey. And I think if to run well, to know how to respond to life, you need that. This sounds funny. You need that gas. Christ is more than gas, and the Eucharist is more than petroleum. But you get the idea. You need the thing to run on to make your life to be at its best.
Yeah, and I do want to say, as far as our COVID precautions that we are still taking, as you mentioned, when the dispensation was in place for the obligation, we do still offer, you can listen to Park in the Parking Lot and listen to our Mass on, I believe it's 90.5, the FM station.
Correct.
And then somebody will come out and give you the Eucharist if you don't feel comfortable inside. So we do have some extra things in place to help you wherever you are with your comfort level. And we have quite a few people, not quite a few that come to a daily Mass because they know it won't be as crowded as a weekend Mass. So, and I'm saying like, and they'll ask me, does this count for my Sunday obligation? I've said, yes, of course it will. The fact that you're honoring God one day a week, that's great. So we really want to make sure everyone feels safe when they're here in our parish.
Can you tell us what time those Masses are during the Advent season?
Yes, they have changed now for a bit. We have Mass on Tuesday nights at 6 o'clock, and we've had that. That'll continue. But now we've changed Masses on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday to 11 o'clock. And actually, we've had that for a couple days now. We've got quite a few people. Yeah, yesterday's turnout was incredible. And today. Yeah. It's been wonderful. So we thank all of you. So for some of you, maybe the morning is not the best time to get up, and especially if snow ever comes. You're worried about the roads or driving conditions. By 11 o'clock, you might feel more comfortable. And some of you who are working, perhaps you can sneak out of your job a bit and join us. It's 11 o'clock. All the daily Masses are in the main church. Yes. Again, we want because of the larger room as opposed to being the chapel. We'll get back to the chapel eventually, but right now we're in the large space, and so please join us if you can. Yeah. So, besides the Sunday obligation, why do we have additional holy days that we are obligated to go to Mass? Was that your question or someone called that in?
I don't know how we got it.
Question. It's a good question. Well, I'd like to think there are many holy days throughout the year. There are days of memorial, like we're remembering a saint. There are days like Thanksgiving was a holiday. Those are great times to join us. But the whole idea of being obligated is like to kind of nudge people forward to say, we really want you to spend time praising God in this day. Now, I'm old enough to remember when Epiphany, which used to be January 6th, that was a holy day, but then they moved it to the second Sunday after Christmas. Or Ascension, used to be Ascension Thursday, now it's the Feast of the Ascension, which is again the 7th week after Easter. But it's the whole idea of saying, we have this obligation, but people just weren't coming. We still want to recognize how important it is.
Sure.
So the bishops in their wisdom say, you know what, we're going to change it a bit. We have a lot of people who really enjoy the Holy Day Masses because we try to make it a special flair, but many times it's not as big of a crowd. It has more of an intimate feel, but when people join us, we are always delighted.
Yep. And we do have a couple holy days coming up.
We do indeed.
Next Wednesday, December 8th, is the Feast of the Immaculate Conception. So we will have our masses at 8:30 and 7 o'clock, or 8:30 a.m., 7 o'clock p.m. And the 8:30 morning mass will be live streamed. So that's an option for our online viewership.
People get confused, though, because we're celebrating the conception of Mary by her parents, even though the readings we use is talking about the conception of Jesus with the angel Gabriel, but we're celebrating Mary's conception immaculately by her parents.
Right. And Christmas is also a holy day of obligation. And our Christmas masses are Friday, December 24th at 4 and 9 p.m. and Saturday the 25th at 9 a.m.
Right. And we're trying to keep everybody safe at those masses. So if you come and join us, we want you to feel that you can come and not worry about a lot of other things. So with that,
Sure.
Do we talk more about what we're planning?
Sure. We will still have a lot of our COVID precautions in place, like our every other pew spacing, and we will always be strongly encouraging the use of masks. But this year, again, like last year, we are going to ask that individuals register ahead of time for our masses, just so we can plan accordingly for the limited space we do have. So that will be at all of the Christmas masses. Details will be coming about that this weekend and what that means.
And then we're going to, hopefully, we'll have some great ushers helping people sit so that we can get people in a safe way, but also to kind of get them in so we can fit as many people as we can into the church.
Tetris-style seating.
Yeah, it's kind of like that type of thing. And I always have a great seat at Christmas. I love it. I'm looking out there.
And I just want to mention that special seating is just for the 4 o'clock, because that is our busiest mass.
Right.
So if you want to avoid that, try the 9 or the 9, because those are less busy.
Every year, every church, the early Mass on Christmas Eve is always crowded. So if you can, join us at the other ones. It's the same great music. It'll be the same great liturgy. There's no change in the fact that sometimes that works better into your schedule. So consider the 9 o'clocks if you can.
All right. Well, let's shift a little bit.
Okay.
What about my friends who don't go to church but are still nice people? Does going to church really make a difference?
Wow. I'm glad that they're nice people. Okay, that's good. And does it mean that everybody who goes to church is nice? Of course not. There are people who continue to sin or to make mistakes. But I think it's the whole idea of modeling. Again, at the Eucharist in the Catholic liturgy, Jesus didn't tell people a lot of things to do, but he did say, eat this, referring to his presence in the Eucharist. He didn't say, once in a while enjoy it, or if you get a chance, you might want to stop by. He said, eat this, and when that happens best way is in the context of the Eucharist, specifically the weekend liturgies. So I'd like to say that it's nothing that I'm thinking about or that I created myself or the bishops did. This has been going on since the time of Jesus, to say, let us gather together using the Jewish notion of one day every 7 days to set aside to praise God. is that friend still a good person? Of course. Should you try to guilt them into coming with you? Of course not. But I think one thing is missing from a lot of Catholics, and you can think in your own life in this, is that many times we are afraid to talk about our faith, or we're afraid to talk about what we get out of church. I've been trying to ask people, this sounds odd, why do you come? And I've just been impressed at people's reasons. Because many times we say, why don't you come? Or what's wrong? In the negative, but really saying like, wow, what are you getting out of it? And I'm always delighted when people talk about it's the sense of community. It's the sense of ritual. It's the sense of getting fed, whether it's by the sermon or the readings. It's the good music. But most important, when people are really connected, they'll say it's receiving Christ in the Eucharist. And I think that there's nothing that's going to replace that. So.
Yeah. And actually, we just got a question in that goes in with
Okay.
what you're saying.
Okay.
How do I talk to my friends about God and religion without sounding weird?
Yeah. I think the weird part comes when people preach. Whenever you say, you should. I think I do. And I'm a preacher. When someone starts telling me, you must, and this is, it never works. But when you do talk about it, if you talk about your own experience, for example, let's say you come to church and there was something that really touches you, such as like there was something in the sermon or there was a piece of music, is to say to people like, wow, I heard this or I saw that. There's sometimes people will actually tell me about quotes they have received from not only our liturgy but other liturgies. I think that's important. Like when people use Facebook or Twitter, perhaps you just want to say, here's a line that I heard at church today. But I'd like to say that it's the personal witness when people say, here's what I got out of it. Here's what I learned. Or here, and many times I hear, I don't know if you do this, but people just feel, I feel better for the week.
Yeah.
When I start with the weekend with Mass, the week goes better. And I think for people to hear that, they're like, what? Why? And some, maybe that'll be more inviting.
Right. It just kind of frames your week the right way. That's how I feel. Also, I think when you're speaking, if you're not coming from a place of shame, like shaming people just doesn't work. It makes them feel terrible and they just shut down. Mm-hmm. So yeah, trying to approach it a different way, like in even the way of, this is what works for me. Right.
And this is what I got out of it. And this is how, I think it's a great way to be more inviting.
All right. So here's kind of jumping back to our Sunday obligation.
Okay.
On Sundays, we have the obligation to attend Mass, but it is also meant to be a day of rest. Are there certain activities acceptable for us to do on Sundays? Is there a guideline, or is it based on one's own perception of what work or rest is? And so I'm really hoping here that you're going to tell me I shouldn't be cleaning and doing laundry on Sundays. I mean...
Nope, I'm not going to say that, but here's what I'm going to tell you.
Shoot.
It comes from the notion of a Sabbath. It comes from the Old Testament, from the Ten Commandments. And the whole idea is setting aside a time to just trust God, to just relax. There are many people who have to work on Sunday it's because of their job or because they have chores to do. Mm-hmm. And I say, go ahead and do them. But take the time sometime each week to do nothing. Or in a sense, not do nothing, but to just let God run things. Many times that could be a whole day, which would be wonderful. But maybe it's just even as little as an hour or a half hour where you're not busy or working about something. Taking a walk. So if you find yourself that, Sunday's the only day that I can get this task done, I would say, well, go ahead and do it. But then find some other time during the week. What's happened, I think people mistakenly think that the Catholic Church says you are not allowed to work. Not at all. But what they're saying is we're trying to give you the freedom from work so that you recognize your life is bigger than your work. That you're just not focused on the doing, but simply resting in God. But if people have to work, are they sinning? I would say not. Jesus worked on the Sabbath. He was healing people. He was doing all these things. And that's what the Pharisees, they freaked out.
Right.
How could you dare do that? You're working. And Jesus is like, really? Come on.
Right.
The Sabbath is meant for you, not you for the Sabbath. So I think it's the whole idea of, in our Catholic tradition, and as all Christians, we're trying to teach people to say, slow down a bit. Relax more, trust God more. And I think the whole idea of having a Sabbath rest or a holy day, 1 day a week, is beautiful. Is just to say, we want you to become better.
Nice. I like that. Another question. I heard a celebrity share that they are not religious, but they are spiritual. Why do we need the institution of the church? And if I can just focus on my relationship with God by myself, isn't that just good enough?
Wow, that's a great question. Thank you, whoever sent that in. Ideally, you need both. Because if you have only religion without spirituality, you can just get caught up into the rules, the dogma, here's what it is. And if you have only spirituality without religion, you could wind up thinking anything. It's like, well, this is okay, and I'll think that type of thing. I'd like to think of the image of faith being like a tree. And the trunk of the tree, which doesn't move much, is religion. And the leaves and the branches are the spirituality. And they'll sway and they'll change it as we do. An image that I think works well, back in the day, I played basketball back in middle school. We called it junior high back then. And easily someone can go out and shoot baskets. Easily they can just go out and dribble by themselves and shoot. But it's more fun when you can do it with a team. And it works better if the team has some rules. Because I've played enough ball where it's just like backyard, fouling this and hit. It's just not fun. But when the group can agree to say, no, this is out of bounds, this counts for 2 points, this is what we do, it just flows better. So I think for a lot of people, when they think about religion, they're thinking of it's just rules, or it's hurting my spirituality. But it's really not meant for that. It's meant to kind of give us some boundaries or give us some guidelines so that we can deepen our spirituality. Many times there are people who, within the context of going to church, they have their spirituality deepened. And many times there are people in the context of becoming spiritual, they have this encounter with God, or they're out on their deer stand and it's this powerful thing where they're saying, boy, I want to find out more about church. I think one thing that church does well, a church community teaches you what to do with your pain. Everybody has struggles. A church community teaches you to look beyond yourself. Because many times if you're just a spiritual person, you think, here's my concerns. But as we do every liturgy, we are always praying for world needs. I think a church community and religion, it's going to have you remember people from the past. Like, people went through the same experience that we're doing now. The Israelites had struggles. People had doubts. This is nothing new. And when you're in church and you hear the scriptures and saying, oh yeah, that's right, and they got through it, I could too. I think it's very important.
Yeah.
If that helps.
For sure. And I think, too, the church is like that structure. Like, kids need structure. Like, we all need some kind of a framework for us to go along and do our thing.
Right. The danger can be if it seems like it's so structured with no leeway. I'm not much of a cook, but I've got a good friend who she bakes chocolate chip cookies, and she never uses a recipe. And they're always sort of the same, she says, but they're changed a little bit. And she says that's the beauty of being a cook, because there are guidelines. You know, you can turn the oven on to this, or add eggs and I don't know what you put in cookies, eggs and chocolate chips and things, but
flour.
Thank you. Okay, there we go. See, we're on a roll here.
Sugar.
There you go.
Yeah.
And then with that, she might add more of this or more of that. And I like to think in any church community, we have that little leeway. We're not going to be yelling at someone because they're not doing it right. Especially now, what I've been trying to do at church, I don't know if anybody noticed this, I'm always trying to make people feel welcomed by telling them when to stand, or open the book now because we're all going to pray this together. Always thinking that there's somebody who's come for the first time, or somebody who hasn't come in years. Never want them to feel
uncomfortable.
There you go.
Yeah.
One of the many things I like about Christ Our Light is that we don't try to pretend to be something we're not. We don't try to to be perfect.
We are guiding an imperfect people because we are imperfect also.
And we hope all of you feel welcomed with that. That we're not saying you have to be perfect to attend. Or Pope Francis keeps saying the Eucharist is not a reward for a perfect week. It's fuel for the journey ahead. I love that.
I love that too.
It's just like, it's going to be a tough week ahead.
So we're going to get back into spirituality.
Okay.
How important is spirituality?
Very important. Very important. I think if the thrust of faith, I think, is one's relationship with God. And I think spirituality means like how you and God are doing, because it's yours. I mean, ideally, the church and the laws and the rules, they are then to guide one's spirituality. If you don't have a spirituality, hopefully it'll be developing. Because some people, they come to church, but they say, I don't know if I believe, or God doesn't talk to me, or God did and now this bad thing happened. And I always keep saying, hang in there. Don't give up on God. But part of it is just take the time for God. Take the time every day just to check in, or before I go to sleep, like tonight, talk to God. Just tell God what's a good thing that happened in the day, what's a negative thing that happened. Just simple as that.
I like that.
To connect.
What experiences have most shaped your spiritual life?
Wow. Well, I actually alluded to this last Sunday. It's really been the failures. I mean, I've been lucky enough to have some good things happen in my life, but it's really when things don't work out, or I totally drop the ball on something, that I've really had to say, wow, God, how are we doing? I guess I've had to turn to God to say, you got me. I'm struggling here, God. Can you help me through this? And God has. So times when it's like, oh, that worked well, or oh, I did this. I'm wonderful. It's great. It's fun. But I don't think it deepened my spiritual journey much. So for people who are struggling out there, if something didn't work out or you're facing something, perhaps that is your time to get closer to God. God's not planning it, and God is not forcing you, like God set you up. I gave you this struggle so that I'm going to teach you a lesson. God doesn't work like that, but we can always learn. And so if you are struggling, I would say take the time, talk to God. Maybe perhaps come to church, or come to church more.
How do I talk about my religion with someone of a different religion?
And I assume what they're meaning by that is someone of a different denomination.
Yeah, I think so.
Do you think so?
I think so.
So religion, we have the Christian religion as opposed to, like, say, Muslim or Jewish. But denomination, I would think, so it's like Catholic or Lutheran, Methodist type of thing. Well, a lot of the religions the denominations that are Christian actually are offshoots of the Catholic Church. If you go back to the tree image, that we have this tree image, and a lot of things were the branches that broke off, or they protested, hence the word Protestants or Protestants. So sometimes Catholics can come across as being superior, like saying, we do this and you don't do that. Many times people say, how come you Catholics do this? Or how come you guys have these 7 sacraments? And really don't do this, but the way to think is like, why don't you have the 7 sacraments? Or why don't you have Eucharist on Sunday? But I think, again, just to talking about what you value most about being a Catholic, what you value most about your experience of being a church member, because there are things that everyone's going to enjoy. Hopefully, like Christian music. You don't have to be a Catholic or a Lutheran to enjoy that, or praise and worship, or read the Bible. But when we gather, and the Catholic liturgy is pretty stylized or pretty ritualized, as opposed to just, I don't know what we're going to do today. We'll just kind of freelance. So you know what you're getting into. If that touches your heart, perhaps share that. I know people have gone to other countries, and they say, I know what's going to happen. You know, like, I know what's coming next. I don't understand anything because I don't understand the language.
Sure.
But I got it. This is the sermon, or this is the Eucharist, or something. And there's something comforting about that.
Yeah, that familiarity. So we're going to shift a little bit to some doubts.
Okay.
Questions. What do I do if I have doubts in my faith? Where do I go with that? How do you unpack that? Because that's a lot.
That is a lot. There is a theologian named Paul Tillich, and he says doubt is a part of faith. Okay? So if you have doubt, it doesn't mean you don't have a faith. It means you probably have a pretty good faith. Because in everything we're experiencing, there's got to be an element of saying, wait a minute, let me think this through. Or let me own that myself, as opposed to just saying, yep, no matter what you said, I agree type of thing. And doubt is not the opposite of faith, but doubt is I say, extension of faith. There's another theologian named Bruckner, and he says, if you don't have doubt somewhere in your faith life, you're either asleep or you're not paying attention. Can we have doubts about different, I would call them human-made things? Certainly. Are there things that are pretty core to what we believe? I say, yeah. I have an image. Do you remember what a vinyl record was?
Yes.
Are you that? Okay.
Yes.
Do you? Okay.
I do.
Okay.
I've heard of them.
Okay. Thank you. So think of a big vinyl record or a disc. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
In the Catholic Church, everything that we talk about, everything we profess, is on that record. Okay. But there are some things more central. Okay.
Sure.
And there are some things that are on the edges. Most often what people are arguing about or people get so upset, it's like on the outer edges. And we're saying, yeah, whatever. Or someone says, I just don't pray the rosary. And we're like, yeah, okay, that's on the other edge. But I believe in a God who loves me. And I believe that Jesus was there, human, and died for me. That's central to who we are. So if for something you're doubting and like, well, I don't know about this, you got to recognize how crucial is that to our faith. And you'll know, just go to the creeds. Like we have the Apostles' Creed or the Nicene Creed, as opposed to, well, what about this? It's like, well, is it part of the creed or is it maybe one of those edge things?
Sure.
So,
how do you know God is real? Or maybe, why do you think? Why do you believe in God? Maybe.
Okay. Before I do that, can I share something I just thought of?
Yes.
Mother Teresa, Saint Mother Teresa, she died with a lot of doubts about God. I mean, she's this, she got the Nobel Peace Prize and she wrote these books and she started an order. And then they found out later in her journals that she really doubted the existence of God. And she was really wondering, am all I doing in vain? It's amazing because even with her doubts, she did these incredible things.
Right.
Which is pretty important.
Right.
Even like, I'm not sure if this is going, she still helped the poor. Gosh, I'm going to sound very odd, okay? Because I
for the first time ever.
So I don't want to say I believe in God. I say I know God. Okay? So it's not like I'm taking somebody else's experience, like say Pope Francis or St. Peter. Those are pretty good ones. But I really have been blessed to have a personal experience of knowing God, and I continue to try to develop that. I've had different times in my life where I've actually had that profound presence of God. And I think a lot of people have, but somehow they just kind of shove it off or like, oh, that was nothing. As opposed to really focusing on this and say, thank you, God. I had some great teachers in my life who encouraged me to focus on that and stay with that. I was able to do that. So I don't just believe, but I say, I know there is God, and I know that God loves me. Not all people can say that, but I hope they get to a point where they will. So I'm not basing it on somebody else's testimony, or I'm not basing it just on the Bible or on the rules. It's this experience right here, a point to my heart here.
How can I know God's will in my life? Like, how do I know what I'm doing is God's plan or not?
So in the Lord's Prayer we say thy will be done. So we say that every time we say the Lord's Prayer. As opposed to my will. And I think God wants good things for us. So if it's not a good thing, that God is not saying, yeah, I want you to do this bad thing. There is a writer, his name is Thomas Merton, Father Thomas Merton. He's a Trappist. He has this great prayer, and part of the prayer is, and I'm not going to get it perfectly, but he says, dear God, just the fact that I want to do your will is indeed doing your will. Does that make sense? So just the desire to say, I want to open myself up to do what you want me to do, God. As opposed to say, nope, I want it to go this way, God, and would you just change your opinion so it goes this way? But just to say, God, I really try to do what you want to do. And I think, as Paul talks about, the fruits of the Spirit. So if you're doing something and you have a sense of joy about it, that's probably God's will. If you're doing something and you're serving others, that's probably God's will. If you're doing something and it's just awful, Saint Catherine of Siena, I believe, she said it's hell all the way to hell and it's heaven all the way to heaven. Which means faith is not meant to be sacrifice, drudgery, boring, evil, and now I'll go to heaven. It's like, no, she alluded to the fact if you think that way, you're probably not going to heaven, if that's what it is. But if you find joy in what you're doing, if whatever, responding, working for the church as you have done and Jenny has done, if it comes with a sense of joy, that it's like, it's probably God's will. It's probably God's will.
Like being authentic too.
There you go.
Not
Yeah.
faking it. Does God really hear me when I pray?
Yes. And I'm going to expand on that. God hears everything you think or say, not just when you pray. And I always like to think that that God has a phone and you have a phone. And when we pray, we think like we're picking up the phone, and God is never hung up. God has been saying, now where were we? Let's pick it up. And for some people, they haven't talked to God in years, maybe decades. God's waiting. God is not saying, who are you? God is saying, where were we? But God has been saying, yeah, I've been there your whole journey, even though you may not have noticed, you may not have acknowledged, but I've never left you. I've always been, even in the difficult times, God has been there.
Yeah, it reminds me of the Footprints poem.
Yes.
When there was only the one set of footprints, that's when God carries you.
That's when God carries you. Exactly. It's beautiful. Yes.
So we have a question just come in. Why in the world did God create me? Not me, them.
Okay.
There are so many problems in life. I hate, X, Y, Z. They didn't give a specific characteristic. Okay. Did God make a mistake when creating me?
God does not make mistakes. God does not work like that. Does that mean there are not... perfection is an illusion. Nobody is perfect. Everybody's going to have problems. And I think what happens many times is because of, TV ads and the way we think of celebrities.
And social media.
Social media.
Sorry, Facebook.
Is that we think this is how we're supposed to be, whether it's how we look or act. It doesn't happen. I've never, ever, ever met anybody who's perfectly happy with their bodies. They want more of this, less of that, taller this type of thing. Mm-hmm. But God made you exactly how God wanted you to be. And nobody else is like you. You're the only one that God created just like this. And part of it is to say, and not that we can't work on ourselves and improve ourselves. I don't mean that. I think everybody should eat right, get sleep, exercise. I think everybody should take time to pray, should reflect on themselves. Journal is a big thing. But even in that, to say that God says, I love you just the way you are. You don't have to do anything for me to love you more. Actually, you can't do it. Like, no matter what, I'll pick on this person here. Like, there's no way God is ever going to love you more, no matter how many prayers you say, no matter how many Bible verses you memorize. And there's no way that God is ever going to love you less. But I did this. God's still going to love you. As a parent, you know that.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
There's no way you're going to love your child less or more, right?
Right.
But I don't know if she's watching, but she might screw up. She might do something.
She does frustrate her mother sometimes. Yes, that is true.
But you're still going to love her.
Yes.
And
always.
even if she got the A honor roll, you're like, I'm proud of you, but I'm not going to, that doesn't make, I love you more. Same thing with God. There's nothing that we're going to do to change God's love for us. Do we want life to be different? Maybe. But I think the happiest people I know are the people who can just accept what's going on. I've had a chance to travel all over the world, and there are people who I think are very poor. They seem to be some of the most joyful. They don't have much, but they're happy. And I know people in this area who seem, in my opinion, have a lot. They don't seem very happy.
I think too, when you I reading this question again, and the viewpoint I'm picking up on from this person is, we have to give ourselves a little bit of grace, and if we are feeling kind of down, it's really important, and I think everywhere we're talking about it is mental health. And
yes.
Talk to somebody. There's I mean, like I've heard you say in your homilies many
Yes.
times, everybody should go to therapy.
And I strongly believe that. Everybody. Some of you are in school and you can get a counselor or have a counselor in your school situation. Here in the diocese, we have a thing called Catholic Charities. It's a branch of the diocese. And they offer counseling at a pretty reasonable price in the fact that it's prorated as opposed to, because sometimes counseling can be expensive,
Yep.
and many times insurance pays for it. But even if it's not, I tell people, go get somebody who can just listen. Go get somebody who can give you some feedback.
Yeah, and in my experience, because I do go to therapy, I love it. But you also have to find the right person. So if you go one time and you don't jive with that
That's a good point.
person, keep looking until you find one you like, because that makes a huge difference.
In my situation, I've had a therapist too for a while. Now I have what's called a spiritual director. He's a retired priest in Minneapolis. I meet with him every other month. I'll just talk. He listens and just gives me feedback, which I really value, where he'll give me nudging or encouragement. But I think everybody can. And it's different than a friendship, because many times a friend, they're going to always, yeah, you're right in doing this. And somebody who's a therapist or a counselor or a spiritual director, they're going to be more objective.
Yeah, because your friends oftentimes don't want to disagree with you or tell you that you are being a jerk.
And hopefully this professional can say, we should look at this or we should look at that. And there are people who are suffering from very serious mental illnesses, especially now with COVID.
Yeah.
That just more than just the fatigue, but really some overwhelming things. If that's you or if it's somebody you know, please contact a therapist. If you're not sure of where, give me a call, give the office a call. We'll line you up some people that we recommend.
Yeah.
Would be great. But we're trying to get everybody as healthy as we can.
Yeah. And on that note, too, we have a special Light Up Princeton event that's taking place December 21st that we are part of through Christ Our Light. So December 21st is actually the evening of the winter solstice and also the longest, darkest night of the year. So that's why they picked that night. So that's to build awareness of the importance of mental health. So from 5 to 8 on the 21st, the city of Princeton, with the help of volunteers from everywhere, including Christ Our Light, they're going to be lighting up the Reedy Park Trail with luminaries. So we definitely need volunteers to help fill the luminaries and participate in the walk, and then help too with the cleanup. So it's something that the whole family can do, and something that's just very important right now and always, but especially in light of the COVID everything.
And so to get involved, how do they get more information?
We do have a link on our website that'll give you some more information.
All right, perfect. And if you can't join, pray that night for all the people who are involved and people who are struggling with some mental illness issues. Pretty important. Thank you.
Yep. Another one here. Why does God, who is all-loving and all-powerful, allow suffering and evil? Why is there so much suffering in the world today?
Right. There's a classic book by Rabbi Harold Kushner. It's, 30 years old now. The title is When Bad Things Happen to Good People. You can probably get it on Amazon. I would recommend everybody reading that. Again, let me say it's When Bad Things Happen to Good People. Not why do God think bad things, but it says when, because bad things will happen to good people. That's just what happens. I don't believe that God intends bad things to happen. And I certainly don't believe that when something does bad happen, that God is saying, oh, okay, I'm getting you back. God doesn't operate that way. If God did, we'd be dead. And some people think like, I cheated on my second grade math quiz and now I got a flat tire. God does not work like that. But there are bad things that happen. I use the same thing, I guess, the example of a parent. That as a parent, you know that your child is going to bump their knee. They're going to break their heart. They're going to make mistakes. And do you want them not to? Of course you do. You want good things for them. But there's also a learning curve when a child faces bad things. You say, well, let's pick ourselves up and let's move on. I think God is the same thing. God continues to want good things for us, but I think God is there to help us learn from them, grow from them, not to punish us, not to make us feel bad. There will always be difficulties. But I think part of it is just how you phrase it. Is this a problem or is this an opportunity? Is this like the end of all, or is this like, well, I guess that door closes and I'm going to go this direction? I know some people who have cancer, and they say it's the best thing that ever happened to them because they started to rearrange their values and what's most important. Mm-hmm. And some people who thought their life was going to go like this, and it hasn't, and they say, you know what? I'm happier now because I'm on this path. So I think it's a whole trust God thing.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
Actually, Lynn posted that suffering has brought her closer to God.
Wow, beautiful.
Powerful.
Thank you, Lynn.
Yeah. So here's another one that Jenny just sent over. As I understand it, Mark didn't write the book of Mark because it was written after he died. The book of Revelation isn't actual events for today, but when it was written. So what do you think about all the various scriptures that talk about the sun going dark, moon not shining, and the stars falling? How do we know what we're reading is actual or not, or real or not? Or
Yeah. Everything in the Bible is true, and some actually happened. Okay? I didn't make that up. I had a scriptures professor. The fact that there are many things in the Bible, they were meant not to be literally accurate, like a newspaper account, but they were meant to be more of a spiritual truth or a theological truth. And they were meant to be more symbolic of what's going on. But many times when we read something, and we want it exactly to be like this. If I read the paper, I don't want to give a theory. I don't want to give it to editorial. I want the facts. Well, a lot of the Bible was meant to be poetic or symbolic. And I think a great way to read the Bible is to put it onto yourself as being more of not like telling me what to do things, but use your imagination of what it's going to mean. Example, like let's say the sun going dark, is to think of like, what are times in my life when I've really felt like I've been in a dark time? And what did that do? Or when you talk about the dragon is going to come with 7 heads, what are some evil things that you have encountered that somehow you didn't think you were going to go through, but you made it through? A lot of that symbolic language. I'm going back to the gospel writers, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. We don't know that they wrote them. That was a later edition because they didn't sign it. They wrote it. That was not important to them. But over time, tradition said, like, well, we think this sounds a lot like what a tax collector would write. Or we think this was something like the beloved disciple would write. Could they have written? Sure. Is it important that it's that name? No. Maybe it's George. Doesn't sound as good though, does it? Gospel of George. Doesn't. Sorry, George. That's my brother's name, but it's a good name.
Doesn't
but
have the same ring.
Doesn't have the same appeal. But yeah.
So this one I love.
Okay.
Why isn't God more visible to us?
I don't think it's the fact of God not being more visible. I think a better way of spinning that is like, why do we have our blinders on?
Yeah. Why aren't we seeing?
Right.
Where He's present?
I think God has been like just today for any of you watching. God has been trying to get you all day long. God has been trying to get your attention all day long, whether it's that song, that sunrise, that person in your life, that text. And many times we are so busy. I'd like to think that God is trying to burst open, but we have these shields, these blinders, these armors, sometimes because we put God in a box. Mm-hmm. That this is the way that God's going to talk to me. And God is like, oh.
You're going to tell me?
Yeah, surprise. I've heard if you want to make God laugh, tell God your plans.
Yeah.
But I would say more of like everything that happens to you, think of it more of like saying, wow, God is present here.
Yeah. And before we wrap up, if some people would comment with, where do you see God visible? Maybe Jenny can, if people comment, Jenny can share those with us.
That's a great idea.
But one way that I see God being visible is the way our community comes together for the Christmas giving program.
Oh yeah.
It is incredible. It's always, we help over 100 families, I think it is. And we've been a part of that for the last 15 years. I guess this is the 15th year. We have the whatever tradition of starting it. Mm-hmm. It started with us, with other churches also, but we're part of the Brainstorm. And it's not just us that do it now. Right. It's bigger than us. So the area churches collaborate and support giving. The support we give comes through gifts, gas, grocery cards, and other supplies to over 100 families, which is just incredible. And you still have a chance to help out if you would make a monetary donation, pick up a gift tag at masses or in the office. You can always stop in during the week and then purchase a gift, go shopping, take your kids shopping and let them pick out some gifts. That's always fun. And volunteer and pray for those people that you are picking up a tag for. I mean, they're obviously going through a tough time, and thankfully we are able to help out. Mm-hmm. So there are more details about that on our website.
Great. So
you can always check that out there. But yeah, I mean, I myself had the privilege this week of helping a gentleman fill out one of those applications, and it's kind of hard to tear-jerking almost as you're sitting there and helping them, but knowing that we're a part of making their holiday a better time and less stressful is super important.
It's a great way of seeing God visible, of helping somebody else out, even if you are not at your best, but to go out and help somebody else. Many times people say, wow, I could feel the presence of God. It's very powerful.
Did you get any comments, Jenny?
Tony said, I visualize it every day when I see my nurses or nursing assistants take care of our elderly residents. That's truly God's work.
Beautiful.
Yes.
Love that.
Yes. And shout out because the healthcare sector is struggling. So thank you for what you're doing. This one said, why do some churches keep the tabernacle hidden or tucked away, while others, like us, keep them fairly prominent? Also, some put the different colored cloths of the seasons over them, and some don't. Is there a reason for this, or is it just the priest's preference?
Well, we'd like to think anything that happens like that is bigger than just the priest, that there's a liturgy committee or a staff working on that. Back in the 80s, when they were talking about designing churches, a lot of the information said it's good to have a reserved chapel. So you would have the tabernacle in a space where someone could just go and pray there. Such as Elk River, our neighbor down the street, St. Andrews, they have a chapel just for that. And they will actually have perpetual adoration there too. Here at Christ Our Light, there actually was a period where the tabernacle, which is in the church now, it actually was in our chapel.
Oh, really?
And then they moved it back into the main section. So there's pros and cons both ways. I think now more the movement is because not many people are taking advantage of that chapel experience.
Sure.
That if it's out there prominent when more people are there, it seems to be a better fit for people. Does it have to be? It does not have to be. And there's always going to be a sanctuary light there, tabernacle light next to the tabernacle. We always have one burning, so whichever Catholic church you go on. But covering it or not, that's certainly just a preference. There's no rule about that at all. You could do it or not do it, depending what you do.
Okay. What is redemptive suffering?
Redemptive suffering is the notion, it fits in line, we could do a whole session on that. Many times it's talking to Christ that he suffered and he died for us. We call that atonement. But many times it's the thought of people doing, like such as I'm dealing with this personal injury in the fact that I'm dealing with this so for greater glory. It's a theology that can get you stumbling, because sometimes we think the only way that God is going to love me is if I'm suffering, or the only way God is going to tolerate me is if I go through some kind of hardship. That's not the way God works. But it does mean that if there is suffering, ideally we believe as people of faith, that's not the end of the story. That eventually there will be resurrection. Eventually the light will come. So I think it's more of that positive spin to say, even if you're having a bad time, trust God has good things in store. This too will pass. All will be well again, as Julian of Norwich says.
All right, so I did get that question, which means she's not asleep yet. It's close to bedtime.
Busted.
But, yeah. Was Jesus really born on December 25th?
We have no way of knowing. As we mentioned before, there is a solstice coming up, which means the days are going to start getting longer. And that's always been a festival of lights. And there have always been pagan customs around the end of December as kind of like, this is a time to celebrate. Could Jesus have been born on the 25th? Maybe. Back then, they did not count birth dates. They did not keep a calendar like that. They would say more like, I was born in the 5th year of the rule of Tiberius, or I was born, that type of thing. They didn't count the dates. So is Jesus born on the 25th? I doubt. But could he be? Of course. He was born. We celebrate that. When people say we're going to have a birthday cake for Jesus, I say it's a great idea, but you really should have one every day of the year for Jesus, a birthday cake. Because he's keep birthing every day, not just one day of the year.
Mr. Non-desserts over here. All of a sudden wants cake every day.
I'm not going to eat it. I'm not going to eat it, but you can have it. In the fact of celebrating that God is trying to break into our lives every day of the year. That God is trying to say, I want to bust into your when you feel down and out and things aren't going. God is saying, that's where I'm going to be.
All right. Well, that's a great Advent discussion.
All right.
I like
love
that
it.
question to close it out, kind of get us into the season.
So how about a blessing? God, may you watch over all of us as we watch this either live or on the taped version. Be with us in this journey of Advent and faith, even amidst our doubts. May we know you are always present. May God be with us. May God bless you all, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit.
Amen.
Thanks for joining, and we'll have another one of these.